Having a Gas is the podcast that talks the great and the good of the creative industries, and in particular finds out what makes great music for film, for TV, for commercials, for dancing to, for cooking to, for f***ing to, and more. Today I'm having a gas with Laurel Stark and Sheila Judkins, respectively the creative director and the director of brand management at The Sims. And since its inception in the year 2000, The Sims has sold over 200 million copies, so I wanted to know what the secret to their success was and how you keep it relevant. Thank you for coming digitally across the pond and, being with us. And how is it? It's 5 p.m. here on a Friday, and it's, 9 a.m. there? Is that right?
Yes, 9 a.m. on the West Coast, 6 a.m. or 12 noon on the East Coast.
Noon right, on Sheila? The East Coast where I am, yep.
Yeah, because we forget the continent of America is just that. It's not. We fall into the trap of thinking it feels just like one country, and then we go over and visit. And the difference between, let's say, New England and Florida is as vast as the difference between, LA and Austin. Whereas, we assumed that we were just talking off mic about how we've got you guys have family over here, and we think 100 miles is just too far to bother going. So
It depends on the family, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How much you like them.
It does. Should we? So we're going to get into the process of, having never done one with two people on at the same time. We're going to see how this goes. And so why don't we start with a little bit of chat with you, Laurel? Tell me about, what you've been doing recently, as in, the last 24 hours. And then, we'll get around to Sheila.
Well, I'm Laurel. I'm the creative director on The Sims, and I am pretty new to this team, although it feels like it's going really fast. And we are in busy season right now, so just prepping for holiday. And so it's been a whirlwind of approvals on trailers that we have coming out and planning for our holiday campaign and some really exciting things we have in the works around content that hasn't been launched yet. So lots of conversations with production companies right now.
And so over here, we when we say holiday, we mean vacation. Are you meaning holiday season, Halloween, Thanksgiving,
holiday
Christmas?
Season. Yeah, we always say like the campaign formerly known as holiday, which is not necessarily Christmas season, but it's kind of to be launching in November, December time. So we're all in planning mode right now.
The most wonderful time of the year. And Sheila, what's been on your plate? Also, Union Jack, I didn't notice it, and now I did. Thanks for that.
Yes, British people in my family. So I work more closely with the studio side. And so we're thinking about next year and content launches and strategies and, what are we going to prioritize for our players in terms of what players want in the game and also where we want to take The Sims for the future.
Yes. And this is super relevant because when I got into the office on, I forget which morning, it was one morning this week, the first story on the drum, one of the trade papers that we just browsed, it says, the EA Chief Marketing Officer lays out gaming's offensive on social media. And that was the first time I'd really caught wind of the idea that games are not going to be viewed as games forever, but as an entirely new and immersive experience and something that is going to make the land of 2D scrolling seem like a distant and defunct memory. I don't know who wants to go first, but just, give me a bit on that. Free associate, where are we going with games versus, what it was in my day, which was a pretty solitary experience? Where's it going?
You can go ahead, Sheila.
Thank God. Yeah. So I think when we think about different industries of products, consumer goods, experiences, et cetera, you have, you have consumables and wearables, you have toy, and then you have entertainment, and then you have video games, which are the most interactive and immersive experience you can have. It's a two-way dialogue with players, with consumers, with families. And so it is very immersive. And as we think about asynchronous games or even multiplayer games, this is the new way people are connecting. And, we see Gen Alpha, young teens who are on FaceTime playing video games together. And especially during the pandemic, this has become their new way of connecting. And so that's one of the things I've been realizing even with my kids is in the past where we may have met up in person down the street and created stories together, right? And done the role play. Who's going to play the mom? Who's going to play the child, right? All of the things. They're doing that now in video games. And specifically in The Sims, you have the ability to do that, to create exactly who you want to be in the game and then share it and tell it to your friends. And so this is becoming, one of the ways people are interacting with one another. And I suppose it is really, what everyone's talking about with the metaverse, this crossover of digital and IRL interaction.
Yeah. And I think also we're in such an interesting time right now, right? We've all, in some ways, had our worlds collapsed on us because of the pandemic, and where our lives are becoming, how do we punctuate our lives? We're not commuting to work anywhere. We're not leaving for school anymore. And I think the fact that we have this very deep digital world to be a part of, in a way, at least what we're hoping on in the games like The Sims, is it's actually a world expanding. So while outside you may be experiencing the collapse of your social capabilities or the punctuations in your day, but if you're in The Sims, then hopefully you're expanding your world. You're discovering new people. You're discovering new ideas, new ways of thinking about things, and hopefully being excited about what's possible. And I think as a global game, as a global brand, that's something that we're really thinking about, is how we can enable that discovery and really expand people's worlds in a time when they really need that.
Yes. How do you, for someone like me, I'm 28, so I'm sort of going into true adulthood, where you start doing, family and things like this. And I didn't realize till we were warming up for this discussion and sort of preparing for it, that I was thinking of The Sims in my experience of it as a recent memory, when actually it was 20 years ago, and the landscape that it occupied was about so many sort of 100 square feet. And, it was the original, where there's no world outside the road, outside the house. Whereas now it's sounds like, what you were just describing and where it looks like we're going, an open world, and one where people will be, what would you say, socializing in a very casual way, not with the intent to do some, stereotypically gamey activity like race or compete somehow. So just in the context of, let's just stay in the context of The Sims, how recent a development has that been? When did it go from being, a more gamified experience to being a social experience?
Well, I think that, The Sims has always been a bit of a creative platform for people. We've never been a progression-based game or a competitive game. And I think that's really what the appeal is. In some ways, when I try to describe Sims to people that don't know The Sims, I tell them it's 3D Photoshop. You can come in and create whatever you want in 3D form, right? So it's always been that. But I think like anything else that is a creative brand, people need points of entry. And what I mean by that is like the Crayola example I always use is if you give somebody a 64 pack of crayons and white paper, some people will thrive and create endless things. Other people will be overwhelmed and not have a starting point. And that's where the brand stories or the pack content that we put out is really important, to sort of guide people and say, here are some things you could do to inspire their own creativity. And that's really the goal of the stories that we put out there. But I do think, 21 years ago, I think that was always the intent of The Sims, is to empower people to express themselves, to have a place where they could come and experiment, discover who they are, figure out how you want to show up in the world. And what a better way to do it in a place where there's not really real world consequences. There's a lot of devious things that happen in people's personal games, from trying to figure out how many people you can hook up with in a 24-hour period to the pretty famous 100 baby challenge. So yeah, it does allow that safe space for experimentation and self-expression.
Yeah, but I do think that there is that point. The one thing that does, I feel, make The Sims unique is we do have that kind of devious, mischievous quirk. So you can set up your amazing life in The Sims, and then gnomes will come and destroy your home, and or your neighbor's cow plant will eat your family, or these kind of crazy, wild things. So it's definitely not you're not escaping to this to this beautiful, serene environment. You're escaping to somewhere where crazy things can happen. And I think that fun also, and that idea of like anything can happen here. You can make choices, but there's still influences happening in the game. That means that you're not completely in charge of everything that happens. Like that element is kind of, unique to the experience in The Sims. And I think it's something that people like because it brings that element of, crazy choices that you might not be able to make in the real world, or even just how you react to a situation. I think it's interesting how we think about what happens in game and then what that does to your brain when you're out in your own life. How has that expanded the way that you approach relationships or any things that you've thought about yourself or how you show up in the real world? And even like exploring things like your sexuality or making a choice that like would normally blow up your family, but you can do that in The Sims and like have this other kind of like half-life there that that lets you explore the different facets of yourself. So I think that's what's so wild and fun for us about The Sims too.
No, that's really interesting that you mentioned that because obviously we're recording here, and so you can ask for anything to be scrubbed from the record if needs be. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm preempting mentioning what could be perceived as a competitor brand, which is what you were describing there, Laurel, sounded like a version of the game's Second Life that didn't carry with it the social stigma that brand carries with it. I'm thinking of when... I don't know if you guys have both seen The Office when, yes, plenty of nodding, when Dwight is on Second Life and he says it has no winners or losers. And Jim says, no, it has losers. The thing is, with The Sims, you don't have that perception of it. It seems, let's say, wholesome for want of a less overused word. And yet you can still do what you were just describing there, Laurel. You can kind of say, let's run a simulation of my life as if it were out there and just see how I feel when I do it. A tame example of that is the fact that when I was playing The Sims, the original, I would always, I'd say as soon as I could afford it, as if I was hiding the fact from you that I used the cheat codes to get all the dollars, I'd always get a grand piano for some reason. So I always knew that that's where I was going. And those are the kind of things that you can experiment with now, but on a broader scale.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting you're saying like, yeah, you can have this serene life in the game, but I think it's also about a twist on what that looks like and challenging people's ideas of, like, for example, Cottage Living, which just came out. Yes, that's this beautiful, like, English, inspired by the beautiful English countryside and the ability to, like, make amazing meals from scratch and go grow your own vegetables and all this stuff that feels very very serene and kind of like back to nature. And then we have these crazy killer chickens that will attack, like have fire eyes, and they'll come and attack you. So I think, yeah, there is that element to it that is keeping things from being too much of just a replacement for real life. And I think that's kind of the nice thing about The Sims. It's never going to be an exact replica of what you can do in real life. There's always that element of kind of chaos and a bit of like, this is not reality, obviously, and I think that sets us apart in that way for sure.
And some of that levity, that humor and levity is actually really needed. Like, we all need to be able to kind of laugh at if we're all trying to build, more resilient humans of the world, we have to be able to kind of laugh a bit at ourselves when we make mistakes. And so that's one of the things I particularly appreciate about the game. And, the consequences aren't so real.
So something that's quite frightening when one thinks about it is always the passage of time and, how much longer ago something was than you realized. I saw a meme today that said, what was it? We're nearer to 2050 than we are to 1990, which wasn't a pleasant thought. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right to raise your eyebrows there, Laurel. So the point being, we're 20 years since the original thing, or 21 years. And what was 20 years before that? 1980. Video games were just not really a thing beyond. Did we even have Pong then? Or was that 70 something? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Atari.
There was Atari was like
then,
1978 or 79, I think. Yeah. My parents had an Atari set that I played for a while with was it Frogger?
A classic, yeah. Raising an important ecological message at the same time. But the point is, imagine you're in the year 2000, 2001, you're still playing a game from 1980 or the same franchise from 1980. That's a bit surreal. But The Sims is 21 years old. And for people like me, it's a childhood memory. And you have a brand that is successfully not been relegated to the past. How do you maintain that momentum? How do you keep it relevant? How do you keep it feeling like not an old brand, basically?
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing about The Sims is that we have people that come in at these teen years and then they stay with the game for a really long time because it is a beloved game. But the reality is, like, the game really is designed for teens because at that, they say preschool and teens are the ages of your life that have the most change, right? So preschool is all about physical autonomy and teens is all about emotional autonomy. And so at a time where teenagers feel like or even young adults don't feel like they have control over their decisions, empowerment, they go to The Sims and they have every choice. Every choice is theirs to be made. And so it's a quite compelling game because of that reason. And so there really is a new generation of teens every year. And while, yes, if you look back at some of our packs on The Sims 4 from 7 years ago, the overalls in those packs don't look like the overalls people are wearing today. We do continue to evolve because those things are still relevant, right? The ability to break the norm and do the wild hairstyle, whatever's considered wild at the moment, or, push boundaries. All of those things are always relevant to every generation. And so we just continue to evolve and deliver it as best we can to the next generation of teens.
And I think I love what Sheila said about the idea that we are designed for a time in your life, a mindset, a need that you have at a developmental stage. So obviously people are always aging into that category. But I also think one of the things that's so special and exciting about The Sims as a brand is, yes, like, we've been around 21 years. People have big feelings about us. Like, people have memories. Like you said, you have this childhood memory. People have been with us a long time. Like, some of our core base have been around since the beginning, and we know them by name. Like, they're our gurus. They're very involved in the process. So I think one of the things that's really exciting and something that I think other brands sometimes shy away from that we're doing, and especially now, like, working on figuring out like how to do more of, is that listening and that dialogue with people that are vested in our brand. What do they want? What do they need? And then also it's kind of a balance between that and then also where our team is hoping to take our brand and finding the balance of giving our audience what they think they want, and then also bringing them something that they couldn't have even imagined that they're going to love. And it's kind of like that balance constantly for us. And what's really exciting about kind of the evolution of our team is that we're really at this place where even though we've got all this content, it's coming constantly with The Sims, we're getting to this place where we're having these conversations further out, and we're really being able to have like a nice partnership between me and Sheila. Like, I'm on the marketing side, Sheila's on brand management, and and the studio, and we have like these open dialogues, and we're able to like influence what's coming and influence the story about why that's so special. And I think, getting into, I don't know that I'm new, so obviously I joined during COVID, but this idea that all of us are having like our virtual walls down, and that's happening on our team too. And I think that that's really just fueling us forward to this idea that we're constantly thinking about what's next and working together. We're such an amazingly talented team, and I'm excited about that. I love that we have that unique ability to talk to our players, get feedback in real time, talk to each other, talk to the dev team, think about what things are going to be like 6 months down the line, or how do we have that balance? What are the opportunities there? And it's just endlessly exciting.
And that's, of course, another thing that sets apart the modern era of gaming. And it's certainly what it sounded like you were alluding to there, Laurel, is that the gameplay real time affects the decisions you're making on the brand side and on the marketing side. And that I mean, if people are sharp enough to pick up on that, that must be pretty exciting, right? If, you can put it out there and then you can see how are people actually interacting with this thing. And then you go, okay, they like a bit more of column A than B, then we can actually take it there. Have you got any, that's all very vague and abstract in, what I'm saying there, because I tend to do that. So, what does that actually mean? Have you got any examples of the way you've kind of manipulated it once it's out there based on how people are doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of, honestly, the challenges and joys of being in video games is that people are on YouTube telling us every detail of the game experience, of the marketing trailer, even like packaging key art. They're breaking it down, saying, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. And so it is so much as communicators, as marketers, branders, like it is the most unbelievable and valuable feedback we get. And so we do watch a lot of those videos and hear what our players have to say. So a couple of things that we do is, for example, we have community programs that we call our game changers. We also have design council that the studio team works with. And so we're constantly talking to players and people that have been fans of the game for a very long time to get feedback on things even prior to launch. So we do that. We also do extensive market research on big pack launches or big brand campaigns to make sure that they are appealing to the widest number of people or specific groups of people, if that's what we're trying to do. For example, some things we do is after a pack launch, we do look at, quality control on the pack and see what's not working, what are players complaining about. And then the studio team does go back and address it in a very, very short amount of time. So we do try to be as live service as possible in addressing things that are pain points for players. We also continue to listen to our social channels. And so, for example, like in the last year, we've added everything from bunk beds that players really, really just wanted. So we got bunk beds in the game and representation content, like better Asian facial features, because that was really lacking. And so it's really like we have 38 million copies of the game sold. And as you can imagine, 38 million people are going to tell you very different things that they want from this game, especially with it being a life simulation game. And so we just do our best to continue to listen, make sure we're listening in as many places as we can and bubbling up the things that we think are most impactful, specifically around D&I, like around representation content. That is a place where we really want to be, we want everyone to be able to come to this game and be able to create themselves, see their lifestyle and feel that they belong.
Yeah. And I think also, I love like Sheila's point, but I think we're also constantly aware that we are a global brand and that we have people playing from all around the world, and that maybe historically we've leaned a little more like North American centric and or Eurocentric in our development and the kind of things that we have in the game. So we're constantly looking at ways that through base game updates, what can we do to kind of put the things in the game that people are asking for, where we could do better. We're constantly looking at those things, but also we're like experimenting with different types of content that are accessible, that are fun to play with, just to see what people think and what they like and how they react to that. So recently we launched kits, which are these really kind of bite-sized play packs that we've included, and they let people try on like a new clothing style or a new design for around like the Oasis kit where you could build an oasis in your garden. These kinds of like kind of bite-sized things that then pull in these like maybe a global or a style theme that's coming from a different part of the world, so that kind of brings in the idea of representation. But it's also kind of this fun thing that we get to do, and we can drop these more quickly because they're easier to develop, shorter time to develop, and they're $5. So they're accessible for people to buy and play with. And it's also learnings for us. What types of packs are people excited about? What are they saying about them? How are they using them in ways that we didn't kind of perceive in the beginning? And I think, just trying to figure out what the right balance is. But I love the fact that, our development team and props to the studio teams. Sheila's team's been doing some amazing, really exciting work on kits, and just the experimentation and the kind of like feedback that we're getting off those is really exciting. And so I think figuring out how we can deliver the content that people are wanting in different ways is really exciting too.
On a personal level, because we'll get back to talking about the product itself and the world that you both live in a moment. But on a personal side, how much does it feel like there's a pressure to be, let's say, on all the time and awake all the time when you've got a global product being rolled out and you've got feedback coming, around the clock 24/7, whilst noting that we're pushing for better work-life balance all the time? How does that feel?
I think what I see on our teams is that we definitely have moments. For example, when we have a pack launch or an event like EA Play, the teams are on. And for the most part, we can sort of plan in advance to accommodate those things. I do think EA is very, very supportive of healthy work-life balance. They offer us the, access to care that's really important. Certain groups have half-day Fridays in the summertime. And so we try really hard to not do that. And also, I think we just have a really great team that, I could pass to Laurel, hey, I'm on PTO. Can you cover these 3 things for me? No problem. Like, we really do have teams because, look, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all stuck behind these Zoom screens. And so just having people that are just good people that are very empathetic is really important. And that's kind of how we're managing. There are moments where we're always on. And I know our social and our comms teams are the ones that are definitely on the most. And so we try to make sure that we prioritize things for them. The other thing is that, as we all know, with social channels, based on the temperament of whatever happens to be going on in the world, things can just flare up. And so sometimes there'll be something that seems like a huge deal, and in an hour, people are talking about something else and it's moved on. And so we try to temper being super reactive and really figure out when do we need to light up the teams, and when is it just something that we should monitor?
Yeah. And I would say, like, full transparency, I've been rather outspoken about my own mental health journey. I actually launched a project called Our Silent Partner with an amazing art director in 2020, like after we were in a few months into shutdown, that basically aimed to visualize like our internal struggles as creatives with our mental health and start this industry conversation. And for me, that was really, really scary at the time, but it felt like something I needed to do because I kept on waiting for I was waiting for the other leaders to say something and nobody was saying anything. And so finally I was like, maybe I should say something, And I think for me, being open about where I struggled and sharing that vulnerability and encouraging, this was a creative led conversation, but obviously everyone's dealing with mental health struggles right now. But the fact that I was really transparent about that actually opened me up to opportunities at places where they were like, we're worried about mental health. Like, we love that you have a point of view on this, that you care about that. So I knew coming into EA that they had good mental health care, that they were thinking about these things, that they were being transparent about these things. And I've tried to stay very transparent with my team. I just finished an eating disorder recovery program. I had that like listed on my calendar, and it said therapy like on my calendar. And I said, sorry, I can't do this. I have therapy now. And I try to just normalize those conversations internally, because while it might be scary in the beginning, the more that we as managers or as brand leaders or as people that have a platform do that, the easier it is for other people to feel safe. And I think that we really have to lead that way. So for me, like, it's being honest about where I am day to day and creating the space for my team to share where they are day to day. But also I think in terms of with the team that we have, we are at a place where we finally have all of these amazing people together with the right skill sets, with this desire to reinvent the way we've been working, because some of us are new and some of us have the history, and it's a nice mishmash of points of view there. And we really are looking for ways to collaborate more effectively, to get ahead of the curve on these things, to start planning 3 months out so that we're not having these crunches, and to find these efficiencies and also opportunities to do things better. So it's an exciting time and we're still figuring it out. But I think that those sorts of things are speaking to us finding our flow as an always on brand. And I think it's going to enable us to deliver better experiences and better marketing too. And I think, and also better lives for ourselves. And I think that's what we're really trying to build right now. Like trying to live our values. If we want that for our players, we want that for ourselves too.
Absolutely, yeah. And I always love those profound moments in life, like the one you just described, where you said, you were waiting for the leader on this to speak up. And then you realized that was actually you, and it was you that everyone was waiting for, So it's good. It's a moment of what you would, for want of a better phrase, what I would say, it's a coming of age moment,
Yeah.
And so one thing, I'll maybe focus on you for a moment here, Laurel. What's it like leading a creative team that you have only come to lead during the pandemic? I'm making an assumption here that there hasn't been much face-to-face interaction in an office environment yet.
No, I have not. I've actually been to the office once. Sheila took me after we went to dinner together. So I've seen the office. I have not actually been in the office, and I don't think we will be back in the office for quite some time. So EA is being very, very mindful of the health and well-being of our employees and planning accordingly, especially with the Delta spike. So I think that's in the future sometime, but not in the near future. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's been different. I think remote joining a team remotely and joining a team where you're coming in at an inflection point of change. And I think it's been challenging in some ways, but I'm also just incredibly grateful for what I'm joining. I knew when I was coming in the gift that I was being handed. And so I think for me, just being so mindful of caring for the people and caring for the brand in a way that shows that I understand how important they are and how important our brand is to people. So that's always what I try to remember during the frustrating points when you're busy, when you're stressed, when there's miscommunications, always trying to come back to that point of being in gratitude for the opportunity, because at the end of the day, it is insane that I have this opportunity to work with people that are this smart, this passionate, and on a brand that means something to so many people. And I try to lean into that. But I think, a lot of it is transparency and just also leaning into trust really, really quickly, which is hard to do. But the default has to be trust when you're learning. And I think the default has to be leaning into your partners, folks like Sheila, who've been there longer, who can explain to me why things, I was like, what is this a thing? Oh, this is a thing. Let me explain the backstory to you. It helps keep your sanity when you're coming into a new situation. And for me, I'm coming to EA with a much different background than your average creative director at EA has historically. I have branding, agency background, much more 360 with a social forward lens. And I think traditionally at EA, a lot of the creative directors have been more focused on film. So they're more, and I'm thinking about things more holistically. So having no expectations of how things should be and really leaning into building those partnerships has been really key in kind of helping me navigate that.
So that is, there's a lot that, just like the Lion King, there's far too much to take in here. It's good to hear that, there is, let's say, an adjustment of the perspective. You said you have a social first perspective, and previously things have been more like film, let's say, and that's another indication of what we were talking about before, of things transforming into the new media. But you were also describing a very traditional story, which is having to have flipping it, my lights come on automatically. Having to have, a mentor and a confidant in a strange new world. So, Sheila, I take it that you have been there for, some time. And let's, just talking about the COVID thing, because we were mentioning that there, Laurel. I forget how different things are there than here in the UK. What was it like going through the transformation already at EA, last March to where things are now? And, how has the culture changed compared to where it was, if it's changed at all?
Ooh, this is a big question, and I think it's really evolved. So I was in the office. I relocated to the West Coast and was in the office with everyone for about 4 months, 4 to 5 months before we, before we went on lockdown. I think at first it definitely felt like the energy went down a notch because so many people are invigorated, especially in creative teams, when you're in person and you're ideating together. And I do think the Sims team has a really great culture. And I really do. My parallel is music, creating music with people. You're maximizing each other. You're trying to create something that's better than any of you could create on your own. And that really is our mentality around collaboration and work and delivery and things. So that, the energy I think went down at first. The number of meetings went way up because you can no longer catch a coffee with somebody and have a 5-minute conversation. It has to be a half hour. And so just, I think that was painful. I think the scheduling, the amount of time that we all spend trying to coordinate our schedules with one another is really difficult. On the other side of this, one of the things that I most noticed was when we talk about having a seat at the table. And literally this comes from being in a corporate environment where there are executive reviews and truly you're sitting in the second row away from the table, right? With Zoom, you're in an executive review and everyone has equal footing and everyone has the same square on the screen. And at first I was like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. I don't know if I want my voice to be the same as a C-suite executive in this moment. I'm not sure I like this. And so I think that was an adjustment, but also something that really did give people who in the past didn't have a voice or didn't have the forum to speak up. So I think it's hard. What I sense from most people is that they'd really love to be back together in person. I think we're all craving physical, connection. It's really difficult to connect with people through a video screen. But also that many people have been opportunistic in a really wonderful way, having walk-in talks with people, getting their exercise in, making healthy meals, learning a new thing, craft, music, whatever, video game. And so I think the work-life balance will be something that will probably evolve coming out of this. How many days are we really going to be in the office? But those have been the biggest challenge I see. And definitely the Zoom fatigue. And the Zoom fatigue, I think, presents itself in the most comical and not comical ways, from people feeling dizzy to me, where I continue to do that. I've developed a quirk now where when I talk, I turn this way because I don't want to look at myself on the screen anymore. And the joke is that I profile speak on Zoom now. Yeah. So we just have to find the levity in these things, I think. But yeah, it's been a lot, and I think it's been a lot for everyone.
There is an impressive thing that we've all learned, and the two of you so far in this conversation have been exemplary in this regard, which is that we've all learned to be perfect broadcasters and not crosstalk. So, I can tell that you two have like a sixth sense for when one's going to stop and the other one picks up, which is good. But yeah, I wonder if there were ever those moments where we're at the start of the Zoom world and some people were saying, can we not make my screen a bit bigger than others,
I'm sure somebody has asked for that.
Yeah. So I was daring myself to do a Trump impression, but I won't. Those days are over. So we need to talk about some music, because when we first started talking, and obviously my way into this was, Laurel, we were speaking at first about doing this, and then I had the pleasure, of course, both of you being on. The first thing you told me about was Summer of Sims and live music events in The Sims. Now, of course, that is a matter very close to my heart. The only thing I had found out about this beforehand, again, I'm going to mention a rival of sorts, it's not quite a rival, was Fortnite. Someone told me, fortnight that Travis Scott had done a concert, and I was like, a concert in a game? And I felt like an old man immediately. I was like, no, that's never going to happen. Of course, it already is happening. Talk to us about that in The Sims.
I'll let Sheila kick this off.
Sure. So, we have a long history of working with music artists on The Sims, from TS4, The Sims 4 current game to the very first game. We've partnered with over 800 different artists through the years. I wrote down a few, everyone from LeAnn Rimes, Luke Bryan, Zara Larson, Lily Allen, Katy Perry, Japanese Breakfast, Pussycat Dolls, Domino Saints. The list is pretty impressive. Lizzo. And so what we do is we have both an in-game radio station where artists will sing in Simlish their song, and typically it's an up-and-coming artist. We have a pretty incredible music team that's led by Steve Schnurr, who they're in the music industry. They have their pulse, they're on the pulse of what's happening and what's coming. And it's both combination of who's a good fit for the brand in terms of values, inclusion, and diversity, who is going to break, and who we want to help support in their career. And so we just have this really long history of music. We know it's a place of discovery for our players, and that kind of brought us to the Sims sessions.
Yeah. Sim sessions was cool because I think for us, it was one of those decisions around, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but like how do we bring the content in? What is the content? And this was such a great collaboration with the dev team, with the studio team, with the marketing team. It was all hands on deck and figuring this out. But yeah, we did have our first concert at the end of June, and BB Rexa headlined for us. We had Dave from Glass Animals and Joy Oladikin all in our game. And I think the lineup was, again, like speaking to the diversity and inclusion, having a bit of that, maybe you haven't heard all of these artists, maybe you're discovering something new. It was really exciting for us. We wanted to have this idea of kind of a bit of that like summer festival vibe. So leaning into like the hits of the summer and creating space for people to really interact with their favorite artists or a new artist in a new way. And I think that what was so fun of thinking about what would that experience be like in game, and what do we want to prioritize, and what did we want our players to get out of it. And I think one of the most exciting things about that was that we did this as a base game thing. So you didn't have to buy anything special to attend. You just had to, I think you logged in and you had your ticket that you could click in and get to the game and experience the concert. And we had it live for a week. So yeah, it was really fun, and it was a first for us. And I think we have a lot of learnings from that. But it was really interesting to see what people were excited about and how they talked about it. And this idea that, especially during a time, I think, this was supposed to be, hot vac summer, and here we are with another wave, and giving people that opportunity to have that bit of that festival moment that they weren't able to have in the real world, with a bit of a Sims twist was really fun. And I was really, I love the fact that this entire team pushed for the lineup that they did, that they pushed for the experiences that they did. 'Cause as a base game update, that was a lot, considering like our, and this was in between, a game pack launch and a big expansion pack launch for us. So the fact that the teams were able to do that was really like pulling out all the stops, because they wanted to bring something exciting for our players. And even if it wasn't going to be like this, it wasn't meant to be this money-making moment. It was just about delight and showing up for our players and showing our appreciation for them and giving them an opportunity to have something fun to look forward to, So I think that was a lot. It was really fun. And it was one of the first things that I got to work on here, and one of the most collaborative projects that I've worked on thus far. And excited about working closely with the dev team and the studio teams on other stuff, because it was a lot of fun.
One of the other things that Laurel had said earlier to me that is such a good point about this is the reason that this experience is so different and unique to The Sims is that if I'm a player, the concert was in Simlish, which is our unique language, quote unquote language. Robbie Cocker, who's our long-term veteran who basically created Simlish, is just phenomenal. It's not an official language, although I would like it to be.
We'll get there.
Yeah. He's the one that's responsible for creating this with all the artists. But Laurel's point earlier was that, if I'm a player in Japan, I'm listening to music in the same language as a player in, Midwest America. And so I think that shared experience is pretty unique and interesting. I also think that, when we think about the Fortnite concert, that was really, I'm going to this event and I'm a participant in the event. And the thing that one of the things we try to do on The Sims is really empower people. So I could have made this concert, whatever way it was the concert my way. So if I wanted to dress my Sim in, Bohemian style, I can do that. And I can experience this music the way that I want to. And so I could customize, take whoever I want to the concert, wear whatever I want to the concert versus becoming an avatar in someone else's experience.
Right. There's distinction there is like in the Fortnite experience, you are not a participant, with an identity. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes we find that technology is so far ahead of its time that it seems as though it would never catch on. So, for example, video conferencing that we're doing right now has been around since about, 1998, 99. I know, for example, they were scoring the Lord of the Rings a trilogy using this kind of technology, and it seemed so expensive. You needed such an impressive connection, and the market's just not ready for it, and who knows if it will be. And then, of course, pandemic year, it's the only way we've been able to work. And so I'm wondering if the kind of thing you're proposing with like sim sessions could have been had the world been ready for it in time, the kind of savior of the festival season that we all needed in a broader sense. Because, for example, our version of Coachella is Glastonbury, and everyone missed that so much that they turned to old linear media to try and bring it back. It's like, instead of having the festival, we're going to have a live stream event, and it's going to be pay per view like TV, and we'll record Haim playing their set, and then you'll watch on TV. And then when you mentioned Lizzo. I saw Lizzo at Glastonbury, one of my favorite moments musically of my life. It just occurred to me that this could be something that, we're seeing in the future, that you're basically, if hopefully something like this doesn't happen again, but it's an actual viable alternative. You can have the festival experience in the virtual world. Is that where we're going with stuff like sim sessions?
I mean, I would like to hope that's where, not to say like I know exactly where the brand's going, but from where we sit and what our values are, and really, leaning into this idea of the Sims being this destination for creativity and for self-expression and discovery, like that to me seems a natural fit. Like music to me, we've always been supporters of new musicians helping artists break themselves. Like, I think there was an amazing headline we had recently that says, have you really made it unless you've sung in Simlish or something? I think it was a vault. And it was about, Japanese breakfast, singing in Simlish, Be Sweet in our EP 11 pack, Cottage Living. But I think the hope would be that, yes, in a future, in a future world, like we have these opportunities, and that creativity is that we're helping democratize creativity, right? Like, so that it's available to everybody, that everyone has the ability to build their own set, to express themselves in a way, to share their music, to share their art, to meet other artists and collaborate in a way that kind of frees up who's owning the narrative, right? And I think the most exciting thing to me as a creative and as somebody who's always like felt drawn to support the creator community is that I love the fact that we don't own the narrative in The Sims. Like, it's a non-linear game. It's not about our story. It's about the stories that people bring to us, the stories that people create within our walls. And I for the future, like my hope is that on steroids, that it becomes this place where everyone is empowered to make the art or tell the story that they have in their heart. And then by nature of doing that and elevating that, people come here and are like, oh, I see myself in that song. I see myself as an artist. Because, in traditional media, we know this is not anything new to anyone on this call, but the narratives have been owned by white cis hetero men for so long. It's not even an option. People haven't seen themselves, and there is that truth to that. If I see it, I can be it. And I think that I hope that that's where we're going. If Sims is in support of creativity and the democratization and the accessibility of this creative force, that's where we're going, whether it be a concert or a virtual art house or any of these things. I hope that we can be a tool to help that be a reality.
Well, that sounds like, a relatively positive note almost to go out on, because I realize we've almost chewed up an hour there. And of course, here it's Friday night, which means it's time. No, I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere. Over there is Friday. Over there is Friday. Over there is Friday morning. What does the day look like for you guys? What happens between now and winding down?
I was going to say, so I'm actually on PTO today. So after this, I'm actually taking my 11-year-old, who's a huge Sims fan, shopping in Boston to buy a dress for her birthday.
Oh, I love it.
I know, it's really sweet, and she's hounding me for when the next pack comes out.
She's like, mom, tell me. I promise I won't tell anybody else.
Yes, exactly. No, normally, I'd say a typical Friday afternoon for us, honestly, it feels very people first. Like usually it revolves around like checking in, walk-in talks, checking in with people. Hey, anything that you need support on for next week. We do have a really good habit of ending most of our calls in that way too, to say like, hey, is there anything that just occurred in this meeting that you feel like is a hurdle you can't overcome by yourself, where you need extra support, or where we should maybe level set on the ask, for example. Quite often people will ask Laurel's team for a lot of creative development, and in-game capture actually takes a significant amount of time. And so, it's really just kind of making sure that the work is reasonable, that it's the most efficient work we can be doing, where we get the maximum return. It's usually a lot of people check-ins for Friday afternoons, and a bit of like, hey, next week, top of the list, these are the things.
Yeah.
And just terminology-wise, for those of us from the old world, which I shouldn't be referring to myself as now, in-game capture, that's how you shoot a trailer. You actually have to go into the game and do it.
Yes, and we have an amazingly talented cinematics team led by Jenny and Aki, and they just absolutely smash it. Like they are the ones that take our ideas and bring them to life in game, and it takes skill, it takes art direction, it takes time. So always trying to give them the space to deliver their best work is us trying to push back on timelines so they have the time. For me, I'd say the great thing about EA, we are on, our team is one of the teams that has adopted kind of these, mental health Fridays. So we have like no, what do we call them? Focus Fridays. So that you actually have focused time to take care of yourself or to work on work that, gets eaten up by all those meetings. And that happens. We have half days for that. I would say normally I would be having walk-in talks with Sheila and a few of my other partners today. And then I would go work out, and then I would have like a nice leisurely afternoon where I'd probably be working on a brief or a creative strategy or connecting with my team. Today, we've had kind of some unexpected, exciting opportunities hit in the last week that I need to catch Sheila up on when she's back. That I am now, my day is a little bit more full than normal, but it's all good. This is the thing that's so exciting is I actually want to check these emails. Like I want to be on these calls because I'm hyped for what we have coming up. Everything is just so exciting that's where you want to be as a creative. You want to be this excited for what you're producing. So.
And this is absolutely brilliant, because I just realized as the two of you were describing what you're doing there, I spend a lot of the time on this podcast talking to traditional ad land, and traditional ad land is, I don't know if that's the background of both of you, but it certainly seems like it is the case for you, Laurel. Traditional ad land is kind of on its heels and having a bit of a crisis of confidence as to where are things going. People don't care about TV anymore. Kids don't watch TV, etc., etc. And there's this angst of where are things going. And I feel like what we've been discussing is this is where things are going. This is the first, not the first, but one of the only kind of lit up, excited for the future conversations I've had with creatives and people in this world. So it sounds like we're onto a good thing here. And I don't know if there's anything either of you want to mention in closing. I've never done it with two people before, so this is just why why I'm throwing it out there. Yeah.
Well, just to build on what you were saying, I think Laurel mentioned this earlier, but basically, this idea of co-creating brands with consumers, that is definitely where the world is going. And, kids, Gen Alpha they already know what brand means. They have an expectation that they have a voice in brands. And I think, the makeup industry was one of the first to do it, where smaller companies were having votes on the next eyeshadow and turning around that product in a matter of weeks. But this idea of how do we co-create the brand, what it stands for, how it shows up in the world with consumers, that is where we're going. And so figuring out how do you still have a unique brand voice and guiding and shaping that, but also how are you inviting people to the conversation? I think it's super interesting. And then the other thing I was going to say is, I think many industries have already made this pivot. I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan, but this idea that we're not making products, goods, services that we can sell, but we are making amazing experiences for people that they want to be a part of. And I think that is truly how at least the Sims teams is approaching everything we are doing. We're not making things that we think we can sell. We are making experiences that we want people and that we think people will want to be a part of.
I love that. I'll say one extra thing that I think is important, with my advertising agency hat on. I think historically, everything has been very campaign driven. We've got like a hero video. And I know we're trying to adjust in this world where people are coming in at these different inflection points. My one thing would be lean into social, because there's so much opportunity. Like, I think people are either afraid of social, they don't know how to show up on social, or they're like, let the interns run the social channels. No, I think even for us, like pushing that and really trying to bring our social team into like our conversations and figuring out how they can help us tell our stories and how they can serve up stories to us and say, this is what people are talking about. This is who people are excited about. Can we include them? That's really been so pivotal to some of the things that we've been doing lately. Like, for example, we tapped Kira Please, who is this very famous cosplayer who, as we were the first brand to hire her as a voiceover talent for our trailer for Dream Home Decorator. And she was so excited about that during, on our kind of recording session with her, we had this insight that I was like, oh my gosh, you are bringing this character to life. Like, we should get the actual character's jumpsuit made for you so you can cosplay her. And this idea that we had known about her from social, she had this whole engagement around that. And we were able to do that. We actually partnered with an influencer, had the jumpsuit made, and she cosplayed for us. And it was just this extra little activation that all came out of social listening and an understanding of like people that our audience was already rallying around, and the fact that, yes, like a lot of Simmers are into cosplay. So it's like those kind of like fun little moments that you wouldn't know if you weren't taking social seriously. And it starts telling a story about who you are as a brand. And it's not like a huge investment. So I would just say, take social seriously, engage on social channels, listen, have fun with it. And don't be afraid to have your brand join conversations where it makes sense. I think there's this idea that we should be like having this one-way conversation. And it's like, no, the two-way conversation is happening whether you want to or not. So you might as well just like embrace it and get what you can out of it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. As soon as you say that, already the idea of having a big hero TVC and then trying to slowly measure the results and get ready for next year just seems like a distant land.
Yeah.
Totally. But Greg, you're spending your Friday afternoon with the Sims team. So how will you close out the Friday afternoon? What are your hurdles that we can help you with, and what's top of your list for Monday?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it's actually my brother's 31st birthday, so I'm going to go off and help him celebrate that.
Do that.
And then, beyond that, I get you loud and clear there, Laurel, kind of saying that it's 6 p.m. here. Why are you still at work? And so, yeah, how can we help with Monday? I honestly, I suppose the main thing is just I'm grateful that we've been able to do this. Thank you. I know that there's a bit of a culture barrier always to cross with the US and the UK, as you know, Sheila, within the confines of your marriage, I presume. So, no, but yeah, thanks for having this chat. And I hope we can keep in touch. I hope we can keep the conversation going. We're all about music here at Gas. I want to know what you're doing musically and see how the conversation's evolving, because we endlessly discuss where are things going. We don't own our records anymore. We just have Spotify subscriptions. I want to see how the culture's being pushed in this virtual world and see where it's going.
Yeah.
So anyway, bit of a ramble.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
This is fun.
It really was. And, God willing, there'll be a day where I can actually come back to the US. So when and if that happens, are you both West Coast, did you say? Is that right?
Yeah, we are when Sheila's not on vacation.
Of course, yeah. Well, hopefully one day we can have a tour of the EA facility in The Sims. I'm going to ask for that on the record, and you've both nodded, even though the camera can't see you. So yeah, great stuff. I will.
San Francisco.
I will. So I'll bring lots of money. I will leave it there. And yeah, thanks again. I hope you guys have a great Friday, and let's do this again sometime.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.